It takes less than a second to eat a single jelly bean. But to make one, Jelly Belly can take up to 21 days. Every year they produce around 15 billion candies, that is nearly 1,000 beans every second, and create more than 100 different flavors. So how can such a tiny candy deliver such a huge burst of flavor? Today we are going inside the process behind one of America's most iconic candies. The story of Jelly Belly began in 1869 when the company's foundation was established as a family-owned candy business. From a small operation, the brand was gradually built over generations, and that long-standing candy-making tradition laid the groundwork for the quality Jelly Belly still maintains today. But the most important milestone came in 1976. That was when Jelly Belly introduced its line of gourmet jelly beans with 8 distinct flavors and sold each flavor separately instead of mixing them together, which had been the standard practice before. This idea changed the way people saw jelly beans, no longer just a simple candy, but a more defined and distinctive flavor experience. From that turning point on, Jelly Belly began gaining recognition across the United States. At Jelly Belly's massive factory in Fairfield, California, the journey of each candy begins in the kitchen. This is where the candy makers prepare the basic foundation for every jelly bean. The initial mixture consists of water, sugar, corn syrup, and starch. Everything is cooked using a jet cooking method. The mixture is then transferred into large kettles with constantly moving agitators, where it is heated to about 340 degrees Fahrenheit while being continuously mixed until it becomes a smooth, uniform liquid candy mass. From there, each batch is blended with concentrated additives made from natural flavorings, sometimes combined with real juice or puree to create the signature taste of each variety. For Jelly Belly, the goal is not just to make the candy sweet, they aim to recreate the exact flavor profile of each fruit, dessert, or even some of the strangest flavors imaginable. That is why you get familiar flavors like peach or pear, as well as famously unusual ones like booger. Once the liquid candy mixture is ready, it moves into the mogul system, the machine that begins shaping each jelly bean. First, wooden trays are filled with dry cornstarch. Then a mold presses into the starch surface, leaving behind more than 1,000 small bean-shaped impressions in each tray. Right after that, depositing heads fill each cavity with the liquid candy mixture with extremely high precision. The entire process runs continuously, so quickly that the system can handle up to 28 trays per minute, equal to about 2 million candy centers per hour. But this is also where the process starts to slow down. After being deposited into the molds, the trays travel along rails into a warm drying room and remain there overnight. There, the starch begins absorbing excess moisture, helping the centers gradually set, firm up, and develop their signature chewy texture. The temperature and humidity in the room are tightly controlled so that each candy can dry properly while still keeping its soft, chewy interior. After a night in the drying room, the candy trays return to the mogul system, where the centers are separated from the starch. There, mechanical arms flip each tray, releasing the mixture of candy centers and dry starch. The fine starch then falls through screening gaps to be collected and reused, while the young jelly bean centers continue moving forward. But at this stage, their surface is still fairly soft, so the centers pass through a steam-spraying conveyor, which makes the surface slightly moist and tacky. Right after that, they receive their first thin coating of sugar. This layer not only begins building the outer shell, but also helps keep the candies from sticking together as they move through the next stages. At the end of the shift, the candies are set aside to rest overnight again, giving that first coating time to stabilize before they move on to the next layers. By the third day, the jelly beans tumble through large rotating drums in a process called panning, where the outer shell is built around each candy. The shell does not just add color, it also adds flavor. At this stage, the shell is formed little by little through repeated cycles of wetting and sugar application. First, the candies are moistened with a special syrup called engrossing syrup, which is pre-mixed with the color and flavor for the outer shell. Right after that, sugar is added in layers. The process starts with larger sugar crystals, then gradually moves to finer and finer sugars until the final layers are almost like powdered sugar. Each time the syrup wets the surface, a new layer of sugar sticks to it. Then, as the candies continue rotating and rubbing against one another inside the drum, that layer gradually settles before the next one is added. It is this repeated buildup of many ultra-thin coatings that creates the signature soft shell around the jelly bean center. It may look simple, but this step requires very tight control. If the coating sequence is off, if too much syrup is used, or if the sugar is added at the wrong moment, the candies can stick together, lose their shape, or develop an uneven shell. The candy makers have to watch closely and check the texture carefully to ensure the best result. After another resting period, the jelly beans receive a final glaze coating. This glaze is a confectionery-grade finishing agent, used along with a very small amount of beeswax to create the glossy outer shine. As the pan rotates, the jelly beans continuously rub against one another, helping the glaze and beeswax spread into a thin, even layer across the entire surface instead of building up too heavily in certain spots. After one more resting period, the jelly beans are poured onto a conveyor belt to enter one of the most important stages in the entire process: quality inspection. By this point, not every bean makes the cut. Some candies fail to meet the standard. Some are misshapen, while others are simply too large. These little oopsie accidents are called belly flops, and they are separated from the rest of the jelly beans. Only the candies that meet every standard move on to the final step: getting the Jelly Belly stamp. Here the logo is printed directly onto each bean using white food-grade coloring. This system can handle more than 20,000 beans per minute, turning a tiny detail into one of the brand's most recognizable signatures. But that stamp is more than just decoration. It is also the final confirmation that the candy has made it through the entire process and become a complete Jelly Belly. After that, the candies are packed into cartons, placed into storage, and wait to be shipped out to destinations everywhere. When an order comes in, the factory begins the blending stage based on the required packaging format. Different types of jelly beans are poured onto long conveyor belts where about 20 flavors can be combined in a single batch. From there, the candy moves into a large rotating mixing drum where the beans are constantly tumbled together to create an even distribution of both color and flavor. This step helps ensure that every bag customers receive contains the exact mix Jelly Belly intended. Next, the blended candy enters an automated portioning and weighing system. Each serving is measured precisely. Then a release gate opens to drop the candy into a chute that carries it to the packaging line. There, the candy is filled into bags, sealed, and packed into boxes. And it is here that millions of individual beans finally become finished packs of Jelly Belly, ready to leave the factory and head to stores around the world. Behind that small, colorful shell is a process that takes days to create the signature flavor, texture, and shape. But if you could choose one flavor to try right now, which one would you pick? Thanks for watching, and see you next time.